It is Monday, the 4th of October 2021. It's been a while since I put out one of these videos, and there's usually a good reason for that. One of them was that I picked up another week-long ban and channel strike on YouTube. This was not for any video that I've put out in recent times. It was for one that's been on my platform for almost a year. And for some reason, YouTube or the AI bots that they employ to scour the channel picked up on this one and decided it constituted medical misinformation. That old favourite. This was for a video that has been up there since October 2020, almost 1 year. And it was one of my in-car rants. It wasn't the famous one that I did in April. It was titled Return of the Rant. And it was me going off on one in my car once again, enraged at the state of society. This was a year ago. Imagine what I'd have to say about it now. But for some reason YouTube took offence at that and gave me a channel ban for it, so that's why I was unable to post any new content for a while. I did put 2 videos out last week. My interview with Gareth Ike on the Right Now platform on Iconic. That was just a quick 10-minute slot. And also the Good Vibrations episode 199 with Jade Bidwell, a satanic ritual abuse survivor. That was harrowing information. It would have been a difficult listen for many. It was a difficult interview to do, but it was an essential one, and it's all information that needs to get out there as widely as possible and get communicated if there's any possibility of bringing these horrific activities to an end. So I'm back on YouTube now. For how long remains to be seen. I also had a 30-day Facebook ban running concurrently, so I was unable to post up there. I've just got my Facebook back today. If anyone wants to check me out on Facebook or friend me on there, it's facebook.com/DJ Mark Devlin. I'll probably be banned again by the end of the week, but we'll see how it goes. Meanwhile, my Twitter remains, and it's the only platform that I've not picked up any kind of ban for. I've been able to speak freely on Twitter and fly under the radar there for some reason. So that's twitter.com/DJ Mark Devlin. I didn't manage to put out a Sound of Now this weekend. That's my Soulful House 2-hour mix that I upload to Mixcloud every weekend. Saturday, I was in a very dark place, to be honest. It was a pretty shit day weather-wise. It was dark, it was gloomy, it rained all day, and that reflected my mood. I just wasn't in a good place, and I didn't feel able to put one of those shows together. So that will return next week, and this ties into the main theme of this video, which I'll get into shortly. I've not had a chance before on video to mention the London Freedom Rally that took place last weekend, Saturday 25th of September. To be honest, I was pretty disappointed with the numbers on this one. I felt they dropped significantly from the previous events. I was hoping that we were going to build month on month on the incredible numbers that we had at the end of June. Estimates there were that it was in excess of 1 million people. In July, the event was moved to Trafalgar Square, so that kind of stopped the momentum that built up on the march in its tracks, and really affected the impact that those events were having. So in August, it was back to the march, going out of Hyde Park and going down to Clapham Common, ultimately going through Brixton on the way. We had a great reception in Brixton, people really feeling what that event was representing. And I was hoping that in September we would build on the numbers from August and things would just keep snowballing from there. So I felt there was a drop in the numbers. A lot of people just didn't seem to be turning out in the way that they had previously. I know there was a big event in Newcastle on the 25th, and I had encouraged as many people as possible that could get there to make their way up to Newcastle to lend their support to our brothers and sisters up in the northeast who had suffered that disgusting, disgraceful tyranny and violence at the hands of the thuggish police on the previous rally. So I hear the Newcastle one did have a good turnout, and the police behaved themselves because they realised the spotlight was on them as a result of the way they'd behaved at the previous one. But in terms of the London event, I was pretty disappointed with the numbers. So this one went out of Hyde Park and took a different, shorter route ultimately ending up on Clapham Common. And the idea there was that there would be a big party, just going to have a dance, DJs playing tunes. There was a big articulated lorry that had been brought in with a massive sound system rig on it, and the idea was for a bunch of DJs to get up there and give everyone a feel-good party. And I know there's been some commentary about this. There's been a bit of debate online about whether we should be having a party at the end of these freedom rallies, given the seriousness of what these events are intended to represent and are intended to stop and draw attention to. I completely disagree with the sentiment that we shouldn't be getting together and having a good time at these events. This is an essential part of the human condition. It's an essential requirement. It taps into primal instincts that have been there since the dawn of humanity. We are social animals. We need to get together with each other. We need to support each other. We need that spirit of camaraderie. We need to dance. It's in our DNA to express ourselves in that way, to music, to rhythm. All we're seeing now is a modern, present-day expression of this dynamic that has been there since the dawn of humanity. So we absolutely need to get together and have a party and feel good and raise the vibration. That's what this event on Clapham Common was intended to achieve. Positive vibes all the way. Unfortunately, the police had other ideas. So a couple of DJs did get to play. It kicked off around about 4 o'clock, by which point people had arrived at Clapham Common, having marched all the way from Hyde Park. Danny Rampling managed to get up there and play a 45-minute set. He had the crowd jumping. That was a great experience. It was then decided to bring on a few speakers after Danny. About 4 or 5 speakers addressing different aspects of the freedom movement and where we need to go from here. And the idea was that I was going to start DJing directly after the last speaker. So I was up there on the lorry, had my tunes and my headphones in my hand, all ready to play. Right as the last speaker was concluding, and this was a lady from Lawyers for Liberty, the police employed a familiar tactic. They'd been waiting around on the sidelines of the event with their arms folded, in their ranks, waiting for their orders. Because they're order followers, they just do what they're told for their salary and their pension, And so the order was obviously given for them to steam in, and that's what they did. They stormed the lorry, they barked instructions that the sound system was to be shut down, that the canopies were to be pulled across the lorry, and it had to be removed from the common on the grounds that there was no licence that had been applied for. The paperwork hadn't been done, so it was time to shut down the party. Hugely disappointing, people just disgusted with their behaviour, but they didn't kick off. I don't know if the police were hoping to incite some kind of riot so they would have an excuse to unleash the violence, and then the BBC Evening News would have the footage that they want of these dangerous anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists and COVID deniers kicking off and attacking the brave police. So everyone behaved themselves. It was hugely disappointing. The lorry was moved off the site. I didn't get to DJ, neither did the other DJs that were due to go on. But that's what it was, It is what it is, and that's the way these events seem to go. We'll see what happens with the October one. There's one scheduled for the 30th. Who knows how that will go. But that was the verdict on the 25th, and it's the first opportunity I've had on video to address that, as I say. I did wonder, looking at this line of police officers, how many of them went home that day, took off that high-vis jacket and the rest of the uniform, and gave themselves a long, hard look in the mirror and asked themselves, what am I doing? I'm oppressing my fellow brothers and sisters who are just like me. They just want to live freely. They have families. They have livelihoods, and they just want to be free to live their lives, do no harm, cause no harm to anyone else. And I'm stopping them from doing that because I've received the order to do so. I like to think that out of the hundreds of officers that were in attendance, at least 1 or 2 of them, did some deep soul searching, and ask themselves whether, in all good conscience, if they have one, they could continue doing what they're doing. I mean, that's got to be the case, hasn't it? By the law of averages, there's got to be a few of them that went home and asked themselves those questions. I do hope so. Anyway, on to the main theme and the main message of this video. I've titled it, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, in the spirit of the John Lennon song from the 70s. It could equally have been titled Any Which Way You Can, after the Clint Eastwood movie, or it could have been called By Any Means Necessary, in the famous words of Malcolm X. And what it refers to, quite simply, is the coping mechanisms that we all employ just to get through day by day. I mentioned a short while ago that this Saturday just gone, I was in a very dark place. I wasn't doing well. I couldn't even bring myself to put together my uplifting soulful house show, which gives me an uplift to present that music in the same way that it hopefully uplifts the listening audience. I just wasn't up to it. But tomorrow is always another day. It's always a new opportunity to start with a clean slate and a blank sheet of paper. And so on Sunday, after having had a good night's sleep Saturday night, restoring my energy, I bounced right back, and the tenacity and the drive was there again to keep going and do what needs to be done. Anyway, on to the main message of this video, and I've titled it Whatever Gets You Through the Night, in the words of the John Lennon song of the 1970s. It could equally have been called Any Which Way You Can, in the title of that Clint Eastwood movie, or it could have been called By Any Means Necessary, in the famous words of Malcolm X. And what it refers to, quite simply, is the coping mechanisms that we all need to employ just to make it from day to day in these challenging times. So I mentioned a short while back that this Saturday just gone, I was having a really bad day. I was in a really dark place. I couldn't even bring myself to put together my soulful house uplifting 2-hour music show that I do each week. And that experience usually gives me a lift to present that music in the same way that it hopefully uplifts the audience. But I got a reminder that tomorrow is always another day. It's always an opportunity to start again with a clean slate and a blank sheet of paper. And that was the case with yesterday, Sunday, where I bounced right back. I had a really good night's sleep on Saturday, and I was re-energized and restored, and I got my tenacity and my drive back to keep on going. So this is usually the case, and many people will be familiar with this. You're up one minute, you're down the next, and we have to employ whatever methods work for us to get us through from day to day. And it doesn't matter what that is. It can be really trivial, kind of mundane things, and it will differ from person to person. And so long as you're causing no harm, then it's all good. Employ those strategies. I mean, I still use the reasons to be cheerful idea that I outlined in a video a long while back. This is where, when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling, pretty dispirited, I compile a list of the things that I have in my life that I should be grateful for. And it can be constant, ongoing, like, the fact that you've got a roof over your head, the fact that you've got your family around you and you can provide for them, you can put food on the table, you can provide that shelter. Or it can be events coming up. It can be, a social event, a link up with a friend, some kind of event that you're going to, like one of these freedom conferences. I just make lists of these things and remind myself that there are things to look forward to, and it's not all doom and gloom. You have to keep it all in perspective. Our life experience is a rich tapestry of different moods and experiences. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down, sometimes we're challenged, sometimes we suffer, but there's got to be some joy in there, there's got to be some hope, there's got to be some optimism. And I do find that that's the case. You have a down period and then you bounce right back again. But one of the things that has helped me continue and just get through this shit show has been the feedback that I constantly get from my audience. And I just wanted to express my deep gratitude for all the people that get in touch, whether it's by direct email or Facebook Messenger or notes that they leave behind in the YouTube threads below these videos. I have received a monumental amount of support from people these past several months. And they're thanking me for putting out these videos and expressing myself honestly, openly, fully, and articulating what's on the minds of many of them. This is a constant comment that I get in my feedback, that I'm expressing the way that so many people feel out there, but they don't know how to put it into words, and they don't know how to share these sentiments with other people. And I do that on their behalf because I'm going through so many of the same experiences as them, and I'm happy to share that aspect of myself and put it into words the best I can. People really seem to appreciate that. And so in the same way that people tell me that they wouldn't have got through this shit show of the past, getting on for 2 years now, isn't it, if it hadn't been for what they get from my videos and the way that I just seem to be able to help them carry on through, because they realise they're not alone. They realise that many other people feel the same way as them, particularly through the mailbag function that I do, where I read out messages from viewers, from my audience. And that helps people to realise that there's others all over the world that are feeling the same way as them. So in the same way as my videos seem to be helping people because they tell me that they are, the feedback and the support and the good wishes that I get have helped me through as well. And I may well not have made it and may well not be here to do this if it wasn't for that support. So it's kind of like a feedback loop. It works both ways. I gain encouragement and upliftment and a reason to keep going from the support that I get from other people. It's good to know, it's gratifying to know that my output is resonating so much out there. And I never really planned to be doing these videos at all. You know, at the start of 2020, I was just doing my podcast, Good Vibrations, The Sound of Now, The Sound of Freedom, and I was happy with that kind of output, and obviously my books. And I started making videos when the Convid shit show first kicked off, because I wanted to express how I was feeling about things right at the start of this mess. And that just kind of snowballed from there. And I started to get a lot of supportive comments. People told me they found value in what I was saying. And so I thought, well, if this stuff is being felt out there, and if I can be of support to others by doing these videos, I'll keep doing them. And so the feedback grew, and so many more people from all over the world told me that I was vibing with them and that I was expressing how they feel. The subscriber base grew on YouTube. My view count grew, even though I still suspect those numbers are being suppressed. And so I just saw the value in continuing to do these videos, and I felt a responsibility as well to keep putting them out. And it's clear to me now that this was part of my life path. This is what I came here to do. Like I say, it was never in my plans, but I just kind of fell into it, and it's where I needed to be. So it's a feedback loop, and it's whatever gets you through the night. And one of the things that gets me through the night is knowing that my work is being felt. So on that basis, watch out for the next book, Musical Truth Volume 3, coming very soon. I've cleared the diary for October. I've got no events in October because I really need to knuckle down with the remaining work on that book, because this is designed to be a wake-up mechanism for normies, for a normie in your life. And what I want to encourage is for my regular followers, my regular fan base, if you want to call it that, to get a copy of the book. Obviously, they'll find value in reading it themselves, but I would like to encourage them and persuade them to pass on the book when they're done with it to a family member or a friend that is still slumbering and snoring in normie land and believing all the lies and all the deceptions. Someone who desperately needs to wake up and smell the coffee. And I think this book contains all the mechanisms that are needed to instigate that wake-up process. So as well as the music-based content, there is a lot in there to break down just how Convid is a monumental scam and the biggest mind control psyop ever perpetrated on humanity. All the resources, all the citations, all the references are there that anyone could ever need. It's been a very thorough job, a very thorough exercise in research. It's all presented within the covers of this book. Everything you need is in there. And the idea is to lure people in with the music content, because from experience, I know that if you tell most people that there are things about the controlled corporate music industry that they need to know, and that many of their favourite artists may be very different in their true nature to what they thought, it really sparks their interest. You can see their eyes light up. They want to know more. So if you can pull them in with that music-based material, and then once you've got them there reading that book, everything they need there is there to expose the Convid scamdemic, then I think there's some great potential there to wake up armies of new normies that we need to get on our side and really accelerate those numbers. So that's what's happening, and that's coming soon. Something else that's coming soon is 1010, the 10th of October. It's time for another of these mass meditations that I want to put together. So 1010 is a Sunday, which is very convenient, and I want to get this jumping off at 10 a.m. UK time on the 10th of October. So it's 10-10-10. It's following in the spirit of the previous mass meditations. I want as many people as possible to apply their consciousness and their will at that time to manifesting the kind of reality that we all wish to experience and bring it into physical manifestation. So we're going to be expressing our will to bring about the restoration of truth, freedom, justice, love, all those values. And we're going to be imagining that this state of being has already been restored and expressing our gratitude and appreciation to creation for bringing that about. So we're envisaging the end result and we're behaving as if it's already there, because that's the way to bring it into being. So no focus on negativity. No focus on all these governmental traitors facing the justice they deserve. I won't go into detail on this video, but I'm sure we can all imagine the style of justice that they do deserve. Not focusing on that, not focusing on the negative things and things that we don't want to happen, but just focusing on what we imagine is already here. So that's 10-10, and that's coming up this Sunday. Let's get a militia of meditators on board, all participating, all coming together for this one. It'll be a very powerful event. And I think we need to reflect, as I've mentioned many times before, on how much worse things could be if we hadn't done these. We'll never really know the full effect of what these meditations achieve, but I think it's reasonable. I think it's realistic to assume that we could well be in a much worse place if we hadn't bothered doing these things. Such is the power of positive intent. And, there are certain nations where the tyranny has obviously been ramped up big time. We know about Australia and what's been going on there. A nation that doesn't ever make the headlines in the alternative news as well as the mainstream is Slovenia. And I did get a message from a follower of my work in Slovenia talking about how desperately bad the situation is in that nation. The V passports are everywhere. They're required for pretty much everything. The only places that you can get away with not having one of these things so far is the food store and the pharmacy, but they could well be coming soon for there as well. And, everything's been shut down there, all the nightlife, all the festivals, all the sporting events, and things are really bad. It's a police state, it's martial law, pretty much. And I think a lot of these nations get used as testing grounds for what the sick ones wish to roll out elsewhere. Australia has long been used as a nation of guinea pigs and lab rats to see how they're going to respond to certain situations, so that those observing it can then fine-tune the detail and iron out all the creases and stuff and get that agenda perfected, ready for rolling out elsewhere. And maybe they're doing this in Slovenia as well and using that as a test bed. They do it in Scotland, in the UK. Big shout to all my Scottish brothers and sisters. I know things are a whole lot worse than in England on many levels up there. And again, they'll just be seeing what they can get away with to roll out elsewhere. And clearly, we are stemming the tide and holding back the tyranny. Here in the UK, there's been a lot of action outside schools. A lot of parents have formed groups, and they've made it clear to the head teachers of these schools that they will be held personally liable for any damage or harm caused if they should press ahead with the V agenda. There's been leafleting campaigns pointing out the dangers of the V to try and get other parents to take a look at this information and consider alternative viewpoints. And there's been papers served on many officials, politicians, local MPs and such, holding them personally responsible for the damage and harm and loss that they've caused. There's been legal campaigns, there's David Clues and Anna de Buisseret with some great work they're doing on holding these traitors responsible. Later today, I'm recording a new episode with Michael O'Bernisia, the Bernician, to get an update on his case. I get so many messages saying, when are you doing another show with Michael? It's a question I get asked more than any other. So we're going to catch up with him very soon. Watch out for that show later this week. We find out what's happening there. So, stuff is happening, and it's a very different situation to what would be the case if all of us had just sat on our asses and taken it and just rolled over, which is, of course, what they want us to do. And again, this goes back to the freedom rallies. People say there's no value in them, they don't achieve anything, but they do send out a very clear signal that many of us are not having what they're doing. We're not consenting to it. We're not going to give in without a bloody good fight. Let's move on to the mailbag. Very popular section in these videos. I've got 3 communications from my listeners to read out, so here we go with the first one. This guy wrote to say, looks like the tide is turning, mate. Police and Navy SEALs leaving their jobs. I think more and more will walk and turn to our side, and I think we're going to win this. How the fuck can we not now? Sacking our beloved care workers for having been heroes 1 minute and then villains the next. Australian police, the cruel irony. They beat their own citizens and shoot them with rubber bullets and gas them for protesting against construction getting shut down. Then, after the police carrying out the inbreds' dirty work, they succumb to the very same tyranny imposed against them from the government. No jab, no job. Now the police are pissed off and fighting back. He's referring largely to the situation in Australia, but it's going to be the same in many other nations. It goes back to what I was saying earlier in the video about police officers doing a bit of personal soul searching and asking themselves what it is they're a part of. Maybe it's going to take them being told no jab, no job. Maybe it's going to take them realising that they don't have access to their pensions that they thought they did because it's been thieved by these evil criminals that they're serving. To protect and serve, people think that means the public. It doesn't. To protect and serve means they're protecting and serving Satanists and paedophiles and thieves and murderers. That's what these inbreds really are. When it dawns on enough police officers that these are their bosses, these are their overlords, maybe things will change then. And if the police and the military do leave their posts in their mass numbers, what happens to the agenda then? You know, these weak, pathetic, old men who are calling the shots here are hardly likely to get out there on the front line themselves and impose the tyranny. They need their house slaves, their kept pets, their little lapdogs, as Mark Passio would refer to them as. Their attack dogs to do the work for them. Anyway, I'm going off on one. So let's move on to the next message. And this one reads, many of us know that during this ludicrous current situation, the awoken are facing, in a most reductive sense, a quite obvious battle between good and evil. This battle is being played out on the mental, physical and spiritual plane in unison. But have you or your listeners ever truly contemplated that perhaps the good people, interesting that the word good is very close to the word God, and the word evil is devil without the D, no coincidence. Perhaps the good people now finally are able to truly spot each other and come together at this point in history en masse. Is that basic understanding not just the greatest, most exciting news ever? We're coming together via whatever means necessary, that phrase again, and largely through a screen of all things. I suddenly grasped the enormity of this, and huge positivity washed over me. I sincerely hope that in this crazy situation that many of us find ourselves in is happening for a very real reason. The world has to get this insane and this dystopic in order for us to find one another and to form the physical 3D representation of the authentic body of Christ as told in the Bible. This is an expression of Christ consciousness rather than the historical figure of Jesus. This person says, I hold no religious stance on this, but I'm beginning to see the parallels so clearly now. All in all, I'm so very humbled and so very excited to be finding the people of good God, and that our numbers are increasing minute by minute. So with this mailbag section, I articulate all kinds of sentiments, and I like to reflect all kinds of views and mental states and emotional states that people are in. So this next message is very different to the last one, but I feel it's still something that's worth expressing, and I feel this is going to resonate with many people out there. Many of us will have felt this same way at some point over the past couple of years, getting on for. You'll see what I mean when I read it. I just wanted to offer that caveat, that disclaimer before I go into it. So this message is very angry. This guy, it's a very good friend of mine actually, is very pissed off, and I know how he feels. I've been there myself in this exact same place. Let's launch into what he's got to say. This might shock some people. Where the fuck is God? God, I'm calling you out. Where the fuck are you? And if you do exist, why then do you allow this evil to persist? Why, God, do you actually allow and actually seem to enjoy the destruction of the earth and all that is good? Why, God, after fucking millennia of suffering, pain, hate, bloodshed, lies, corruption, greed, destruction, have you not assisted us at the very fucking least to resolve this bullshit? The good people of this earth, and indeed nature itself, do not deserve this treatment. We don't want it. We don't deserve it, and we sure as shit don't consent to it. So, God, we have let our will and our intent be known to you. And yet, the evil persists without the slightest fucking sign of relenting. God, seems to me, I think, you are evil. If I'm wrong, show me that I'm wrong. And if I'm right, then fuck you. Like I said, that's going to shock some people. And I know what the response is going to be to those sentiments from many. I already know what people will say. That humanity as a species, collectively, we have manifested these physical symptoms through our lack of compassion and care and observance of and adherence to natural law. That simplest of rules to live by. Do no harm. Do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. Do no harm but take no shit. Because we've not spotted the signs early enough and put down evil and tyranny ourselves through our own applied will. I know people are going to say that, and that's an appropriate answer to the way this guy is feeling. But I wanted to express those feelings in this video because I do feel it's going to resonate with many. And probably many of us have felt this way at many points along the journey. And we've asked those questions. So, it's been expressed now. I've put that message out there and people can make of it what they will. If you do want to comment and give some feedback, then feel free to put some notes in the chat thread. Either way. Moving on to announcements then. There are no events in October. As I said, I'm battling to get Musical Truth Volume 3 finished. I've hit a bit of a bottleneck because I get distracted. There's so many other things I need to do. I've got the other podcast to put out. I spend hours every day going through my correspondence and I answer as many emails and Facebook messages as I can. It takes a lot of time. I've got family, home life stuff as well, and I've been distracted through so much of that I've fallen behind on the work on this book. So I'm going to spend the rest of this month battling to get that out in time for November. It's probably going to be the back end of November now, if I can achieve that. Or failing that, early December, but I'm doing what I can. Keep an eye on my website for further details of the book. That's djmarkdevlin.com, and that is the one-stop shop hub for all of my activities. You'll find them all there. Big shout to Scott, by the way, taking on the maintenance of that site. Much appreciated. There is another UpRise and Shine conference happening in early November. It's a great event that occurred in September down on a farm in East Sussex. This next one is taking place in Oldham, right there near Manchester, on the 6th and 7th of November. Many of the same speakers that were there in East Sussex. I'm going to be in attendance myself, giving a music industry presentation and also a DJ set on the Saturday night. We had a good party at the last event. Let's repeat that in Oldham. So any listeners based in the north that want to get along to that event, I'll put the details in the show notes below. Should be a great one. There's another Questioning History event happening in December. This is in Battle near Hastings. We had an awesome event just before Christmas last year. It's happening on the same weekend this year, just before Christmas. And that was a great one as well. It was so refreshing to get together with like-minded people at a time when it was so needed during the tyranny of the last lockdown. So if you can get along to this one in December, there's going to be some great talks, all in the spirit of asking the question, have we been lied to about pretty much everything in history? I think we all know the answer to that, but we're putting a bit of detail on it, John Hamer, my good friend, the author, who is kindly proofreading Musical Truth 3 for me because he's got a razor-sharp eye, is going to be presenting, I think it's 3 or 4 talks at that event, really delving into his body of work. I'm giving a couple of presentations myself, and that'll be a great event in December if you can get along to that one. Good Vibrations podcast business, I'm almost up to episode 200. The one with Jade Bidwell was 199, so for the 200th episode, I've lined up a special surprise guest. Nobody will be expecting this individual. So watch out for that in a few days after this video. Later this week, I'll be posting episode 200. And I'm almost up to the 10th anniversary of Good Vibrations. Yes, I'm a decade deep into this shit. That's why I get a little weary at times, because I've been plodding through treacle for over a decade now. Anyway, for the 10th anniversary, I've got a couple of special shows lined up as well. That will probably be sometime in November, so watch out for that also. What else did I want to mention? Oh, I've got a show coming up with Alistair Williams, who's a conscious comedian. We could do with a few more of those, couldn't we? Lee Hurst is on fire at the moment all over his social media, calling out the scamdemic. Lee Hurst is awake and aware and knows what time it is. I've tried reaching out to him. I would love to do a show with Lee Hurst, but sadly I've drawn a blank on that. Just can't get through to the guy. But I have managed to get through to Alistair Williams, who's very similar. You know, he's a comedian who is calling out what's currently going on in a very effective way, and I'll be putting out a chat with him soon as well. I do want to mention an alternative forum to Facebook and all these other social media platforms run by a very good friend of mine, Mark, who is part of the crew that links up every Tuesday for our pub chats, which has been going on for well over a year now and has really grown in numbers. It's like Stand in the Park, only in a pub, you know? Anyway, his platform is called Silent Majority, which he's put together himself. It resides at silentmajority.co.uk. There's a private forum on there where you can build your own groups off and online, and he's also got this concept of a truth cafe in these individual areas, which is a bit like a speakeasy, I suppose, where people can get together and communicate freely with like-minded others about stuff that's going on. So isn't that a great idea, to have a truth cafe, a kind of safe house where you can go to exchange ideas and network and support each other? So Mark's trying to put all that together through silentmajority.co.uk. As I say, it's a safe and effective alternative to all these corporate-owned platforms. So check that out. I've got the details in the show notes below. And Mark says we really want to have one of these in each area and build these groups on and offline, so we don't just have a bunch of bedroom warriors spreading shit and chatting nonsense all day. Absolutely. We need some effective activism going on here. That's pretty much it then this time around. Watch out for those upcoming shows. And it's all about that meditation on the 10th of October, this coming Sunday for 10:10. Catch you next time.